Welcome back, everybody. I wanted to start off June and welcome. This is 1st of June. We're kicking off summer. Can we call it summer based on
Yeah.
the fact that we had 30 degrees in Chicago a few days ago? Maybe.
Wow.
But welcome to the program, Gregg Daniel. Gregg is a wonderful actor, and I wanted to speak to him about his new project, his new movie that's coming out, and I want to talk diversity because I'm a white guy. I'm the open-minded guy that always wanted to work with everybody else, but sometimes you get that opportunity, sometimes you don't. And now our world is thankfully changing for the better. So I want to dive in and talk to Gregg all about that.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Dallin. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Let's get people up to speed. I know you have over
Sure.
100 IMDb credits, but how did you start?
Well, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in New York, and my father is Caribbean. He's an immigrant from the Caribbean islands, and his island used to be under the British. It was under the British. So we actually had volumes of Shakespeare around our house because many of the habits that were in a British household, we had, of course. Now, I would read it. I didn't understand the thing it was saying, but there was something about the musicality of the language when I read it out loud. There was just something about it that seemed, how interesting. And this is English, huh? So so I was really into language. And by the time I did see my first play, I think it was a restoration comedy or something like that, I was stunned. I mean, it was literally like the roof blew off the place to see people in costume with lights and speaking in these strange English and moving around. I just thought, wow. And for me, for this precocious young lad, it was one of the most noble thing I think you could do. I mean, by moving people by stories, by telling a story. And then when I delved into classical work and learned Shakespeare and others, it was just, my goodness, this is amazing. And I knew from that moment on that I wanted to be an actor. And because I grew up in a theater-rich city, New York, it wasn't just Broadway. It was off Broadway. It was off Broadway, Lincoln Center. I mean, it wasn't just going to see Broadway shows. It was also seeing a lot of classical and contemporary and new plays that was all around the city. You just throw a stone and you'd hit some theater somewhere that was putting up a play, maybe a revival, whatever. So I just ate it all up. It was so great for me because I just ate it. I just soaked it all up. Like you could pour work into me like as a sieve. But I really think my first way of getting into it was definitely language, hearing the musicality of language, following language, love of language, using language to move people, to tell stories. So that's how I jumped into acting.
That's very interesting. And then I know you've done a lot of on-screen work and on-stage work. Is there a favorite? Is one more you than the other?
Not really. It's just usually stage work is harder because you're doing 6, 7 performances a week,
Yeah.
matinees, evenings. So there's a certain kind of rigor and stamina you have to have. But the exciting thing about stage is you can feel the audience. There's this alchemy that happens between audience and actor on stage that you can't deny. I mean, you feel when they're listening, you feel when they're not interested, you actually feel there's a vibration, there's something in the air. And that's very exciting. That's very, very exciting. Obviously, with film, which is of course, totally legitimate. It's a different kind of intensity you have to bring because the camera's right in front of you. So I enjoy jumping into both mediums, but with the theater, certainly I have to be ready, literally, physically, to be able to work out there, especially if it's a 2 hour play or 2.5 hour play, or if we're doing some long play, then that really is rigorous to challenging. But again, there's something about being buoyed by the audience's attention, you just know when they're shifting and because you said something. You know when they don't like you. You know when they love you. Really, you know, and not from booze or anything, but you can feel the quality of their attention. So I use both, and both have steadied me well, and I'll continue to do both.
Yeah, and it's not just for the again, I act as well, but it's not just for the actors that feel that. Anytime anybody that at work is doing a presentation or you're teaching a class or you're doing something, you feel that. When you're in front of people, you say something, you know whether it landed or
That's
not
right.
because you feel that shift in energy. Sometimes it's not pleasant and sometimes it's
Right.
amazing. So
Right.
absolutely.
Right. And the thing is, it's only going to happen that time. I mean, tomorrow night will
Yeah.
be entirely different. So whatever got them laughing, just laughing the night before, the next night they could be listening, but you'll say the line and you'll not hear a peep. Wasn't because you delivered it in a strange or new or way. It's just that this audience, the alchemy of this audience was just, they took it more seriously, shall we say. And they're entitled to do it. So you have to be so attentive to what is going on because you have to be so attentive. That's a different kind of skill than in film and television. So, but I appreciate it all. I don't want to cast any dispersions on film and television. I love it.
And people certainly know you a lot from the film and television. Let's talk diversity. I know I
Yes.
mentioned that I wanted to dive into it
Yep.
because, again, I know what I know, and I know only from one perspective. I can listen to all of my friends who are of color or of Asian descent, and I can ask them what it feels like and what they've experienced, but I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
So that's where you come in. I wanted to hear, because you've been in the industry for a while. And you've kind of seen how it was
Hmm.
10, 15, 20 years ago, and you've seen where it's going now. So the first question, is it really changing, and is it changing for the better?
Oh, I think 2020 was a remarkable year, not because of the pandemic. Of course, it was for the pandemic, but when the Black Lives Matter movement really swept through, not only nationally but the world, suddenly there was this accounting for social justice, for
Yeah,
racial justice, and I hadn't felt anything like that since I'm sort of a child. I'm a little young for it, but a child of the civil rights movement. So I've
sure.
never seen a nation, I've never seen cities, I've never seen young people and older people galvanize together to decide this is not who we are. This is not who we want to be. There's white supremacy and there's white power behind things. We've got to dismantle that and treat each other like we all are equal American citizens. And that's dazzling. I mean, it's dazzling to feel that. And now I see palpable examples, not just performative, but real actions. I mean, when the NBA pulled the All-Star game out of Georgia, when
Yeah,
corporations, when the baseball team finally said, we're not going to use indigenous people's names for our team, suddenly there was this reckoning of, well, if you really want to stand for equity, diversity, and inclusion, what can you do? What Don't tell me about it, but now show me what you're going to do. And I have to say, I've seen demonstrative signs. Well, you could also say just in the streets. I mean, we had white kids, Asian kids, African
mhm.
American kids. We have older people, younger people. What a movement! This will go down in history. 2020 as a year that the American conscience said enough of white supremacy, white power. Let's make the playing field equal. So I think it's getting better. I think corporations and just people are taking more account now for. Also, thank God we have iPhones. I mean,
Yes, that's
thank God iPhone. The sad thing about it took. I mean, people of color have been talking about abuse by the law enforcement and communities
right.
for decades, but it took iPhones and people recording footage for us to see, oh, they're not just grousing. They're not just playing the race card. There really is systemic racism in the way they're being treated. That's horrible. And of course, I referred to the murder of George Floyd as one thing that on a phone you could just see. But why are you? He's handcuffed on his on. It's just he's handcuffed on his stomach. Why are you kneeling on him with your full? I'm sure everyone was moved. Everyone saw that and went, this is not some sort of media bite thing or staged. And
No.
we saw a man die in front of us on national television. So again, it galvanized us as a nation, those people of goodwill that said, this is not who we are. This is truly not who we are. So yeah, I see it in all industries, not just the entertainment industry, but I see it in many industries now that are letting out statements in the way they're hiring, the way they're also hiring equity, diversity, and inclusion counselors, people who come in and
Good.
sit down in the corporate culture and will talk to executives and the workforce, but actually to discuss, okay, we think we're part of the solution, but maybe we've been part of the problem. Maybe we've been performative in the way we've treated our policy. So let's take a look and see what we can do. I see that and I can't help but be hopeful. Talk about glass half full. I've never seen quite a surge, an energy toward like righting the ship, if you will, after 4 years also of hearing some horrible attacks against women and LGBTQ and people of so yeah, this is all I'm spilling this all out to say I've never seen such a movement
Mhm.
as this one.
I hope so. And in a way, it takes somebody like the president that we had for the last 4 years before the current administration to really reflect onto people of, is this who you are? Is this who you
That's
want to
correct.
be? Is this what you really believe deep inside? Some people do. I don't think they watch the show, but some people some people
You
do.
won't lose. You won't lose any audience.
I am
Right.
not worried about it because I'm me and I'm gonna
Wow.
say what I think. But I'm really hopeful that what you're seeing and what I'm hoping to see is that people are waking up and saying, no, that's not what we're about, and we want to do something better.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, one lesson was the election of Biden Harris.
uh,
Yes, 7 million, 70 million was voted for number 45. However, look, we have a first woman of color as vice president. We have
Yeah.
Biden, and immediately the empathy changed. Suddenly, you felt this, and then of course that horrible insurrection on January 6th. And once again, we saw it demonstrated in cameras.
Yeah.
Well, they're mostly Caucasian, and look how you
Mhm.
treated them. Yet when there was a peaceful Black Lives Matter movement in D.C., you had the militia. You had the freaking paramilitary folks out there. So again, the nation, you can't deny what you see.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it gets convoluted with a lot of ignorant people who were going to those peaceful protests and then started looting and then started rioting and then started doing things that really had nothing to do with the message and what the people were there to do. And because of that, some people got turned off and some people got the wrong idea of what BLM was all about. And to me, it's, well, people are people. It's you can't
Yeah, there will
control.
always be elements, right? There will always be
Yeah,
elements that will try and take advantage of, or try under the name of a banner of something of a
yeah,
good message will take advantage of it. But I think there are more those of goodwill and
yes,
conscience who want to do it the right way, who want to reckon with our history, who want to say, you know what, this is not who we are as a nation, and we have to
mm,
perform this now, not just talk about it. And I see things opening up in a way that I can only hope, as you say, hopeful. I only hope it will last because it really
me
seems to be
too.
coming from the bottom. It seems to be coming from the bottom to the top of those saying, yeah, right now to be in a corporation or an office somewhere and not explore that seems to be counterculture. Now it's the norm to treat people equally, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and thank God for that because seriously, why would we not be treating people equally?
Well, yes,
Uh,
of course.
the the other part that I find fascinating is that again, it's a curve, right? So you go up on one side of the curve and people get really, really specific and really try not to insult anybody and try not to, and they're so careful that they go overboard.
Right.
And the whole PC and cancel culture is when are we going to be able to actually express ourselves without worrying about anything that we say offending somebody?
Right. Well, yeah,
So
there's going to be mistakes. Mistakes will be made.
right. Yeah.
No, no mistakes will be made. Right now, most of the time now, I'm also a theater director. So one of the first things I ask, what are your pronouns? I mean,
Right.
people are determining who they are. So, what are your pronouns? He, she, they, and
Mhm.
that's something I'm learning. And I forget sometimes. I'll refer to a single male person sometimes as he when he wishes to be called they. But again, that's a learning process. They know in my heart that I'm actually trying to observe. I'm trying to observe your choices as you want to be defined. And so there's going to be a little bit mistakes, and there's going to be some sort of awkward moments, but in some ways, got to right the ship for those who have been undermined and have been discriminated against and have been patronized. Yes, I think you can probably veer a little bit too far that way, but let's look at the given circumstances. It
Yeah.
comes from decades of treating people less than who they are and who they want to be, as treating them as second class citizen. No one wants to be treated in this country as a second class citizen. Nobody.
No, not at all. And that's the part of the the change in society is that now everything is kind of coming out and a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it, but it
Absolutely.
needs to be done and then it'll find its own equilibrium where we can actually treat people as one another without
I
having to
agree.
worry about differences. So
It's embedded in our nation. I mean, the Declaration of Independence, it's
yeah.
embedded about treating people equal. This is not something some new idea we just came up with. This has been the bedrock of our nation from its
Yeah.
foundings, from its beginnings. That this concept that should be treated equally, regardless of race, color, or creed. We're just living up to those ideals. We just have to find the ways now to not make it just sound good or be performative about it, but really live up to the ideals of that. Who's the patriot here? Colin Kaepernick, or who's the patriot? Who's trying to live up to the ideals? And when they see them
Yeah.
go to the left, they're trying to say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Wait a minute!" But that's not the America that those founding those founding fathers
Yeah.
that we did say yes, they're great. But so who is actually now the patriot? Or those who go on January 6th and just want to lynch Nancy Pelosi and our VP? Who are the patriots? We have to really look and go, well, now who are the patriotic ones? Hard, yes,
The
hard, different, awkward, but then change is always It's always,
Mhm.
you're old enough to know change. It's
Yeah,
difficult.
it is.
It's
And
difficult.
thankfully, our industry, and again, I'm
Hmm.
uh, referring to the entertainment industry. Thankfully, the industry, with the technology, with the availability of independent filmmaking, and with the bigger and bigger projects, allowing us to actually see that diversity. I love Canadian shows.
Mm,
Canadian shows, I think, have done a tremendous job at that. Kim's Convenience, Schitt's Creek,
sure.
they've they've kind of created that little bit of an alternate reality in which everybody gets along and they're accepted for who they are, regardless of whether
Right.
what your pronouns are, what your color is, what your identifications are, and that's where we're going. And I've seen more and more in the U.S. starting to trickle in and starting
Oh,
to have that too. So
it's undeniable. I mean, you can't turn it back. And not, I'll give you one better, not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera too. I currently
yeah.
work on a show on HBO, Insecure. And I tell you, the amount of BIPOC individuals who are doing every department of what it takes to make a television series, it's just refreshing for me to see because of my long history in television, usually there are white males who are directing the show, or white
Mhm.
males who are scripting the shows, or white males who are in the DP, in the camera department. Usually, so now I'm seeing women, BIPOC and otherwise, in positions where I haven't seen in 20 years this many gender women or LGBTQ or people of color in these positions that aren't in front of the camera, but actually are decision making positions behind the camera. That for me, seeing the industry move that way, having a female DP or come up to me and say, okay, I want you to do it. That's like, wow, I don't see this very much. This
Mhm.
is refreshing. So I have seen it. I have visually seen the change behind the camera with the inclusion of more females, of more people of color, and it's oh god, it just makes it so much more interesting. It just does.
It does. And again, I've seen it before because I do a lot of independent films. So, student films, independent films, you see that all the time. But I'm glad that these kids are graduating and they're getting jobs and they're continuing on that
That's right.
trajectory.
That's
Does
right.
it make
That's
our
right.
world more interesting to see it through the eyes of the people who have actually experienced things as opposed to somebody who's just writing about it? I,
Absolutely, absolutely. We learn. We found we learn more from people who are not like us. I mean, we do learn a lot, and there's
yeah.
some basic human skills that we learn in terms of listening, in terms of empathy, in terms of understanding. They're just human skills that we learn when we treat other people. First, that they're there, that they are actually there to have a conversation with. And we'll find again, not to be cliche, but we probably have more in common than we have different. We'll probably discover your parents, my grandparents, or where this came from, or this, you'll probably find that we have more in common than we have different from each other, and that's a revelation that will prevent us from misunderstanding each other or giving into some sort of stereotypical behavior because we know, oh, I spoke with Alan, yeah, oh yeah, he's all for, yeah, we speak all the time. We're talking about his daughter's getting ready to go to college, mine just graduated
Yeah.
college, so he's looking the price of tuition. I mean, look, we're two fathers who are having a
Same.
discussion about
Right.
our kids.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? I can give him advice, he'll give me advice. So I think that's a much more advanced and beautiful world.
And much more interesting. Again, I I grew up in the former Soviet Union, so I came here into the United States at the age of 14. There were no black people in the Soviet Union. The only black people that we've ever seen were people who from Ethiopia or somewhere
Right.
in the other African countries that went to the universities, and we were completely mesmerized by seeing something different from ours.
Yeah.
So, and then I come to the U.S. and it's so diverse. To me, this is the cool part. I never understood why I would treat somebody different because of what their color is,
Sure.
really.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so I know I'm not the prototypical kind of person growing up here in a very cocoon environment, not knowing anybody and being afraid of it. So I know I'm a little different. I'm also Jewish, so I've experienced discrimination and being treated as a second,
Anti-Semitism.
you know.
Absolutely.
So
But
I
don't think
get
that they don't,
those
right.
aspects.
If
Yeah.
they don't discriminate against, if they discriminate against
Oh
LGBTQ and
yeah.
people of color, then,
Yeah.
buddy,
Yeah.
you're not too far behind. Sure. Yeah. And
No.
anti-Semitism is on the rise as well. We've seen these incidences in New York and here in Los Angeles. So again, we all have the stake in the society that we get to practice our religion, raise our kids, live at places we want to live. Uh, we're all striving for that, and it's about time that we did have an honest and true conversations, as painful as it is, about what will it take on the road to resolving these conflicts that seem to be embedded in our society.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I loved, and I had Jonathan Adams on the show as well, but I love Last Man Standing. It's one of my favorite
Yeah,
shows because they didn't shy away from it. You had Tim Allen and Jonathan Adams really just open up and have a conversation and laugh
yeah.
about it and see that, yeah, it doesn't matter. We're all really the same, and we can joke about it and we can be friends. So that's where I want this world to continue going.
Yeah, it only festers when you don't talk about it. That's the thing, is if you
Right.
don't talk about it, it actually just festers and becomes more of a
Yeah.
thing. If it's like that white elephant, pardon the pun, but it's like a white elephant in the room. The elephant's there. It seems to take up a lot of space. We're sort of
Yeah.
putting dinner utensils on it. We're dressing it up, but no one's saying, why is there a white elephant in the middle of our freaking living room?
Yeah.
I don't get that. Well, then what are we doing? That if we're not going to talk about it, it's just going to fester. And there'll be this group kind of denial. And it's been hard. Again, it's difficult because these things have taken hundreds of years: racial prejudice, systemic bigotry. However, if we don't start now as a society, when are we going to start? And I can gladly say we seem to be leaning that way now.
I'm very glad to hear it, and I'm glad to hear that you're seeing it in reality. That's the more important part.
Absolutely.
Uh, yeah, we have a few more minutes before you need
Sure.
to run. So I wanted to touch upon your new film, Seventh and Union. What can
Yes.
you tell us about it?
We open tomorrow night, the LA
Yay.
Latino International Film Festival. We open tomorrow night. It's a beautiful film. Talk about people of different races or certain ethnicities. It's about a Mexican boxer, an ex-Mexican boxer, who's tried to come over to the United States with his family, start a new life, and this very disgruntled African-American man who's estranged from his family, his daughter, and somehow, I mean, in different generations, brown and black, but somehow come together and find each other, sort of this will to go on and try one more time. Totally disparate backgrounds: Mexican boxer, African American gentleman, older, coming together and finding something in each other that says, I believe in you. I don't care what anybody says. I believe in you, and I think you can take another shot. I think you should take another shot at life, another shot at achieving your dreams. So it's just from that point of view. The boxing scenes are great. It's about the boxing scenes, but that's really just a backdrop to the relationship that grows between these two men.
No, that sounds like a beautiful movie. Best of luck with the
Thank
release.
you.
We're going to post some links right below the video, so please go
Thank you.
check that out.
Yes.
Um, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Greg,
It's been a
for
pleasure.
jumping
I
on.
feel like we
Yeah.
just sat in a living room and had a little conversation, Alan. I really appreciate your candor. I do appreciate it.
Listen, that's really what the show is about. There's no 20 questions here. It's just a conversation with interesting people. So,
And you
uh,
reveal so much more that way. There's so much more revealing that way.
right. Yeah. So, thanks everybody for tuning in
Good
into
luck with
another
your child
episode.
too, and the colleges that you're
Yeah.
seeking. It does work out.
Thank
I
you.
just want to tell you, I'm on the other side now because mine just graduated
Yeah,
last week. Alan, it does work
it does work out.
out.
Perfect. Yeah, I probably will have another show just talking to people about the college education and the whole system and how expensive it is. That is a topic for another day.
Oh,
But thank you.
listen, how many hours do
Yeah,
you have? We can talk. No, right.
absolutely. Thanks, Greg. I
Thank
really
you. Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Good
And
luck to you.
thanks to
God bless.
everybody.
Stay
Yeah,
healthy as well.
yes. Please be careful. Just because the numbers are going down, and that's a beautiful thing. Please take care and stay
I'm so
careful.
glad you
And
said that.
yeah,
Yeah, we're on the other side because of the vaccine. However, there are other variants out there. So we just need to continue to exercise common sense. That's all. Okay, that's my last word.
okay, sounds good. All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you, Greg, and thanks
Pleasure.
everybody for watching.